Hey, come see me do live stand-up in Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ontario, California, Davenport, Iowa, and Las Vegas. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Donald Trump, they convicted him. And here's what I said about Donald Trump. The proof that this is a political prosecution of Trump and that we are now a banana republic is that George Bush still walks the earth a free man, along with Dick Cheney, two guys who lied us into an illegal war, killed 1 million people, and then ordered a torture program worldwide to cover it up. That's what it was actually for. The torture program was to get people to admit they were working with Saddam Hussein that weren't, so they could have. That's
they
what
wouldn't do that.
That's what they didn't want to get actual intelligence. They were actually trying to. You don't torture someone to get information. You torture someone to get them to say something you want them to say.
But in the movie,
I know.
The guy
in the movie
just
always
works.
works.
Waterboarding.
They claimed it was Donald Trump who was going to weaponize the legal system and prosecute his political opponents. But of course, that's exactly what they had in mind all along and what they just accomplished. The bad news for them is that most people of conscience see through this. And even worse news for them is that those people are going to make them pay for it at the ballot box come this November. The establishment is so stupid and so afraid that they think doing a political prosecution of their number one foe is going to turn people against him. It will have the exact opposite effects. It already is. He is now a martyr, and people will vote for him who previously wouldn't have voted for him. Who do you mean, Jim? Well, people like African Americans and Mexicans who also feel like they got a raw deal from the legal system. I know this is a result. Why? How do I know this? Because I saw those people say so on MSNBC when MSNBC sent a reporter to the Bronx rally to interview black and brown people. That's what they said. The people who are prosecuting Donald Trump hate him, but what they really hate is democracy and the rule of law even more. That's what this is about. They can't allow people the opportunity to vote for Donald Trump again. Same thing with Brexit. They can't, this democracy really fucks up our plans. And so they have to criminalize Donald Trump. They had to criminalize his organization, his political movement, MAGA. They had to criminalize that. So those people could never participate in democracy again in a meaningful way. And they wouldn't have to worry about it. That's what this is about. This is about that Donald Trump somehow got through the system. See, the Democrats have super delegates to make sure that a Donald Trump never gets through the system. The Republicans didn't have that because they never figured anybody running in the Republican Party would be anti-establishment or not a friend to the establishment. And Donald Trump is a friend to the establishment.
He wanted to hang out with them.
He wanted,
but
he filled his cabinet with them.
He's like Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack.
Yeah, it's like when Donald Trump said he was going to drain the swamp, he did, and guess what he found at the bottom of that swamp? His cabinet.
Yeah.
He had Pompeo in there. Mike
Pompeo's a great guy.
He's a great agent. Bolton. He put Bolton in there. Now he's talking about putting Nikki Haley in his cabinet. The guy he didn't bring jobs back to America. He didn't build that border wall. He also didn't give everybody health care like he said he was gonna. He didn't do anything except he did get $1 trillion tax cut for billionaires and millionaires.
Not good enough, Jimmy. Not good enough.
So, and he didn't warmonger the way they wanted. So the big thing that Donald Trump did was, I think it was the South Carolina primary debate, and he said that the war in Iraq was you guys lied us into it. He turned to Jeb Bush and said you guys should be apologizing. That was horrible. We shouldn't be there. We should be out of there. I'm going to take, and you didn't even get the oil. He said stuff like that.
They didn't get the oil.
They even get the oil. And his whole thing was he was an anti-interventionist. And they can't have that. The war machine, no, we've had a plan for the last 25 years on how to take over the world. Ukraine is part of that.
It's called the law of rules.
That's right.
Not the rule of law.
Not the rule of law.
The law of rules.
So if you know about the Project for America, New American, it's all about, it's what Wesley Clark talked about on Democracy Now! When he said after 9/11 he went into the Pentagon and they already had plans drawn up to invade 7 different Muslim countries.
Yeah.
And they also had a plan for Ukraine, but way before that.
And those are just the top plans. The
So-
ones underneath are way worse.
This is all about American hegemony. That's what, and so Trump was a pebble in that shoe, and this is what they do to someone who's a pebble in the empire's shoe. This is what they do. They don't. The people. Oh, democracy's on the ballot. No, dementia's on the ballot.
What's
Dementia's definitely on the ballot. Democracy. They're making sure you don't get to vote for someone. They're making sure democracy doesn't happen because they don't like democracy. That's why the United States is in bed with dictators all around the world. We prefer dictators over democracy. And in fact, if you have a democratically elected government, good chance the United States is going to institute a coup like we did in Ukraine. So that's really Michael Tracy makes a good point. He says part of what makes this so perverse is it accelerates the rallying around Trump as a persecuted martyr figure. So people will indignantly ignore his actual record, like hoaxing his own supporters on Ukraine funding. He did that. Filleting Israel. He's doing that. And sucking up to every Wall Street sleazebag. Oh, I'm sorry. Only the Democrats could make. Oh no, this is the wrong one. Is this it?
Hmm?
Only Democrats could make Donald J. Trump look like Jesus H. Christ. And by the way, Hillary and Billary
Yes.
Clinton are guilty of the exact same crimes. So the crime, it's hard to even figure out what the crime was. The crime was he paid this stripper who he had sex with, or this porn star he had sex with, hush money to shut up. And then they didn't log it correctly.
Right.
Not that they did that, because Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton did that all the time. Like, so remember with Paula Jones? Watch this. This is in 1998.
Well, we're very pleased we reached a settlement. The president does not want to spend one more minute on this matter. The American people have made it very, very clear that they want the president and they want Congress to spend their time on the problems they were elected to solve. And this is a step in that direction.
How much did you pay her?
Fortunately, a new counsel for Ms. Jones satisfied the conditions which we had.
And what did those conditions cost you?
One of which was assuring us in writing that Mr. Hirschfield's money was off the table and was no part of any
So,
settlement.
but how much money did that
and
cost
that
you?
and some other
So to get her to
conditions
shut
were
up,
met,
how much did it cost you?
And as a result, we were able to reach a settlement.
What is the settlement, though?
The settlement number was $850,000.
$850,000.
I don't know how that will be distributed.
So they paid a woman accusing Bill of sexual misconduct, assault, and all that, $850,000 to go away. If the hypocrisy were any more glaring, AOC would have to legislate for greater skin protection. Am I right?
By the way, I don't think Trump even told Michael Cohen to do that. Did you see Michael Cohen's lawyer saying how Michael Cohen took it upon himself to do that and then stole money?
And then Michael Cohen stole $50,000 from Trump.
Yeah, he thought he was going to get a promotion to do that. Yeah.
Also, so the crime they're getting is not that he paid hush money to this person over a sexual scandal. Donald Trump, is that he logged it incorrectly in his campaign finance things, which is not a felony. It's only a felony if Donald Trump does it. I also want to let you know that Congress does this all the time. Congressman paid $17 million of taxpayer money for undisclosed hush payments to cover up sexual harassment claims. Meanwhile, candidate Trump allegedly used his own money for a $130,000 hush payment, and he's convicted of 34 felonies for not disclosing that. That's what this is about.
Really, the Vatican?
Congress paid out. There it is from CNN Politics.
Wait, wasn't someone calling for this to be released? Oh, the Biden's accuser was calling for this to be released, remember?
Tara Reid?
Tara Reid was calling because Congress has a secret file
That's
of all
right.
the money they have to pay out.
That's right. And so I want here, and if this is about scamming with your not logging your payments correctly and because that's what they're saying this is. Not that he made the hush money payment, but that he scammed it in his campaign finance filings. Well, Aaron Mate tweets this. Well, actually, a newsman tweets this. The Clinton campaign misled the public into believing the president was a secret Russian agent being controlled by the Kremlin through sexual and financial blackmail, and then classified the payment to the foreign spy who created that lie, the Steele dossier, as legal counsel. Well, here it is. The Clinton campaign and the DNC misreported the money that funded the dossier, masking it as legal services and legal and compliance consulting instead of opposition research, which is what it was. So, as Aaron Mate says, well, for anybody who cares about trivial things like consistent standards, equal application of the law, etc., that's so of course they have to. And again, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I just told you at the beginning of this segment. But this is them taking your democracy away. That's what this is. And that's why it's important. And it's sad that people who have a platform don't stand up and say something. There's Thomas Massey will say something. There's a handful of Republicans who will say something.
Well, they don't want their democracy taken away.
And there's no Democrat who will say something.
Yeah, they're owned. Everybody's owned.
Right. Jill Stein isn't going to say something. Cornel West isn't. They're not going to actually have integrity.
Hard to have integrity when you're being blackmailed.
They're not going to actually have integrity and stand up and say, if they can do this to Donald Trump, they can do this to me. If they could do this to Donald Trump, they'll do this to anybody. If they could do this to an ex-president. And the fact that George Bush and Dick Cheney walked the earth free men is complete revelation that this is a political prosecution. You know why Barack Obama didn't prosecute Dick Cheney and George Bush for torture crimes? Because he said all those torture crimes happened in the past, and Barack Obama's looking towards the future.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we're not prosecuting past crimes anymore. Apparently, Donald Trump did this crime in the future. Here's what Glenn Greenwald has to say about it.
Ultimately, the case is really about nothing other than hush payments to a porn star who alleges she had an affair with Donald Trump, even though previously she denied that, and a claim that in the books, in the internal books of the Trump organization, those payments to Michael Cohen, which then went to Stormy Daniels, were misclassified. So the case itself is just trivial, especially as a felony. And so, although I've always been a believer in trying to lift and eliminate this two-tier justice system where political elites and financial elites really are exempt in so many ways, not obviously absolutely, but overwhelmingly, I would be applauding this if I thought that this were fairly applied. The reality is there's only one person in all of the United States who would have been charged with 34 felonies or even one felony for having done this, and that person's name is Donald Trump. Democrats have been explicit about how they know that their best chance for winning is to ensure that Donald Trump becomes a felon before the election. Just to give you a sense for the absurdity of trying to suggest this was sort of the rule of law being applied equally, here from the New York Post in March 2020, and 2022 rather, you can watch the New York Post if you want, the story that they did on Hunter Biden's laptop, what turned out to be completely true, even though big tech and the media and the CIA all united to say it was Russian disinformation. And the facts that they're describing here are very easily verifiable. The headline is the Clinton campaign, the DNC, was fined by the Federal Election Commission for lying about the Steele dossier payments. Quote, the Federal Election Commission has fined Hillary Clinton's...
They were fined. They weren't charged with a felony. Or not one felony, or 34. They were fined. They weren't even charged with a crime. They were made to pay a fine. Okay, here we go.
2016 presidential campaign and the Democratic National Committee for lying about how they spent money used to fund the now debunked Steele dossier on former President Donald Trump. The Clinton campaign and the DNC will be forced to pay $8,000 and $105,000 respectively for mislabeling payments that ultimately went to Fusion GPS, the consulting firm that commissioned the dossier according to FEC documents viewed by the Post. The fine stems from a complaint originally filed in 2018 by the Coolidge-Reagan Foundation, which was informed of the outcome on Tuesday. Now, obviously, that seems extremely similar to what Trump has been accused of. They wanted those payments to be hidden because they wanted to claim that they weren't the ones funding and instigating this fraudulent Steele dossier. And it turns out they absolutely were. And the intent was obviously to shield Hillary Clinton from damaging revelations, which is exactly the theory that they just convicted Trump on the basis of.
So when the Clintons do it, it's not illegal.
Sounds like the mafia.
And if it is illegal, you're dead. You're a dead man.
Well, you're going to get depressed, real depressed of how much you disappointed them. And then you might do something and we're really concerned.
And they couldn't even come up with an original crime for Trump. Of course, they just project one that they did themselves.
Yeah.
Of course. Why did it take them so long to impeach Trump? It took them so long to impeach Trump because they had to find a crime he was guilty of that they weren't also complicit in. And they would never stop a shipment of arms to a war. And that's what Trump that was his crime. He paused a shipment of arms to Ukraine. That was his crime. That's why they impeached him. And just to let you know, here is Jack Dorsey, the former guy who used to run Twitter. And he's going to you want to talk about election interference? What about the Hunter Biden laptop? Remember when they all lied and said that was Russian propaganda, that wasn't real? They all lied. In fact, Twitter even banned the New York Post's Twitter account over it, even though it was 100% accurate. Again, you don't get in trouble for lying. You get in trouble for telling the truth. And let's listen to what he had to say. By the way, does Jack Dorsey kind of look like a bad boy John Mulaney? Am I right? Here we go.
Looks like if he didn't stop doing coke.
Yeah, here we go.
Of course, we made a bunch of mistakes, especially around the New York Post and the Hunter Biden laptop story.
What? You made a bunch of mistakes? What? A bunch of mistakes? Or were you intentionally censoring accurate information so you could influence an election?
Sounds like just one
giant
giant
Of course, we made
mistake.
a bunch of mistakes, especially around the New York Post and the Hunter Biden laptop story.
You fucking piece of shit.
Look at this robot man.
Of course, we made a bunch of mistakes, especially around the New York Post and the Hunter Biden laptop story.
You fucking piece of shit.
So that's my take on it. Bill and Hillary. Everybody else has done not only the exact same thing Donald Trump did, they did it right out in public. Hillary Clinton falsified her campaign finance thing to lie about funding the Steele dossier. She lied to the FBI about it for a year. It was all made up. The Steele dossier was all made up. It was smear opposition research by the Clinton campaign. It wasn't real. You come see me on tour in Rutherford, New Jersey, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ontario, California, Las Vegas, Davenport, Iowa, Chicago, Illinois. We're doing a live panel video show, special surprise guests on that show, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets, and make sure you go to Jimmy Dore because they don't want to buy it from a second reseller.